Hi, and welcome back to Wing Chun. So today we're going to talk about what does Wing Chun training actually look like. So Wing Chun, as we said, Southern Chinese martial art focused on striking in close quarters. So what skills and abilities do we need to be able to do that? So first point, we need certain flexibility and mobility requirements. Fortunately, the requirements in Wing Chun are not excessive because there's no high kicking. Kicking is to the waist and below, but often beginners will even struggle with that. So we do need to stretch and open up the hips. Often the hamstrings as well can be tight, especially if you haven't really done any martial arts before. Hips and hamstrings, and then we need to really mobilize and warm up the shoulder joints because we spend about 80-20 proportion of our time punching to kicking or doing hand techniques. So we need to make sure that we've mobilized and activated the shoulders before we start. So we have a sort of athletic warm-up that includes both static and mobility stretches. The second point is we need certain amounts of strength. So we need some physical development. And we're sort of looking in a sort of mild hypertrophy. So we need a little bit of size often if you're completely detrained. So you might need, some size. But then we're mainly looking in the sort of strength component, and we're looking for power and force production, so explosive strength, which of course is related to maximal strength as well. So we have some basic calisthenic exercises, so things like push-ups, squats, planks, for developing the strength of the core. That's another key point actually. So we need a strong core to transmit force well. Lunges, etc. So basic calisthenic exercises, with the focus being on the shoulders and triceps rather than the rowing or pulling muscles. But we do a little bit just so we don't get out of balance between the two. So that second one is strength. And we just have some basic calisthenic exercises. Again, it's not a huge focus, but we do need to sort of reach, often as if the individuals are completely detrained, we do need to do some sort of what we call in the fitness industry now, general physical preparedness. And that's basically what some of that stuff is. Then the next one is stance and structure. So we learn our basic stance, but we also include some sort of Shaolin style stance training. In the horse stance is the most common, and this is to give you what's called root in Chinese martial arts. So basically the ability to sort of sink in and grip the ground, build up some leg strength as well, and build up some structure. Then we learn the basic movements. So this begins with punching. So if in doubt, punch. We need to learn how to punch. We need to learn how to strike. That's what the martial art is about. We learn various different ways of striking, straight punches, punches at all different angles, back fists, palm strikes, etc. So we learn all those, and then we learn also our basic hand techniques, which is sort of our vocabulary in Wing Chun, which is what are they called, the gates. So beginning with Bong Sao, Tan Sao, and Pak Sao. Bong Sao, Tan Sao, Pak Sao, right? So that's our sort of basic movement set. Also some kicking as well, but we focus about 80-20 hands to feet. Next really important step is footwork. So we drill our footwork in particular. There is no good learning, all these hand techniques if you cannot be in the right position to apply them. So you need to be able to move your feet. You need to be able to shadow your move with your partner, do pursuing steps, move out of the way, come off the line, attack different lines using the V step, use the triangular advancing step, and shifting footwork, turning footwork, etc. So whole range of different footwork techniques, often not explored in some Wing Chun schools, I find, and absolutely essential for good martial arts across the board. Doesn't matter what style you do, footwork is vital. And we have particular requirements because of our close quarter striking nature, and our triangular structure in Wing Chun means that we use a lot of triangular footwork, but not exclusively, because when we do sweeps and throws and things, we use the circular action of the hips. So we have circular stepping techniques as well. Good. So that's all good. So we've got some structure, we've learned some basic movements, and we've got some stepping. Well, we need to learn to apply it to actually generate force against something that is real. So then we move on to bag or pad work. So I will suggest applications either on a range of different things, but you've got to hit stuff. Yeah, hitting stuff is important if you want to learn how to hit stuff. Yeah, so we have three main hitting stuff modalities that are not people, which is you could hit a wall bag, which is great, and I will show you them. And I'm a huge fan of the wall bag for training because it really allows you to repeatedly sort of just hammer away the technique. It also conditions and strengthens the hands and knuckles. You must be a little bit careful with it, and I will tell you how to do that. Less is more with the wall bag. Then you also have sort of boxing style mitts, which are a relatively new invention, but Wing Chun people have taken up with gusto, and they're great because you can work. Wing Chun people love working with a partner. They love being reactive and responsive, and you can do that with those kinds of mitts, which is great. We can also practice our sort of more heavy techniques, so like kicking elbows and knees using a Thai pad as well. So again, something that's been co-opted, but we like, because we like to, Wing Chun is about the principles. It's not about sticking in old traditions, right? We adapt and use whatever training methods are appropriate as long as we stick to the principles. And then the final one is you can use a heavy, a heavy bag, or I quite like an uppercut bag, or something like a bob, like one of those sort of self-defense style mannequins, So again, totally fine. Just the key thing is that you're applying those things that you've learned, the footwork, the striking, the gaits, etc., and actually striking something so you can get that sense of proprioception, get that feedback, so you're not just punching air all the time. Right, then that's good, but that's not enough, right? We need to also work with a live partner, because ultimately, bag does not hit back, right? So we need to also learn how to apply our techniques with somebody who is moving from very little resistance to ultimately full live resistance, right? So we begin with partner drills that are quite controlled, right? So it might be just a partner that is just feeding you a string of straight punches, right? And you're just learning how that works, and they're doing a sort of basic type of drill. But then very quickly we move on to, the partner might 1-2, and then you have to 1-2 and cover, right? And you respond and react to what the partner does. And then you start to make it more and more free and break down those patterns until you're basically doing eventually what leads to free fighting, we call, right? So which is our version of sparring. So, but we begin with very structured partner drills. And then as a sort of a subcategory but a very important one that is specific to sort of Southern Chinese sort of internal external martial arts is what's called chi sao, sticking hands. So this is a particular type of drill, which is it's a partner drill where it's sort of live and responsive and reactive, but it's been abstracted slightly away from the real techniques, right? To focus on things like movement quality, timing, control of center line. So you can think of it like it's instead of, if you imagine a metaphor that getting into a fight is like having a heated argument, right? So it's like a real, two people like really trying to prove each other's point in a debate, right? Okay. You could, for example, say chi sao is like a friendly conversation through with somebody with your ideas. So let's say you were trying to, think about your ideas about I don't know, some philosophical topic, right? And you sat down with somebody like, how do I, what do you think about this idea? And he's like, that's reasonable, but like, have you thought about this? So it's sharing. It's in a supportive, building environment that allows you to play with the ideas that then get tested out with somebody who's really trying to take you down, right? So that's kind of what chi sao is. It's slightly abstracted away from real violence, but it allows us to work in that space where there is where people are competing for center line, where people are trying to apply the movements, but in a supportive environment that allows you to repeatedly test things out and get more and more experience. So it's a very, very useful and very, very clever drill, because what is the alternative in a striking-based martial art? The alternative is sparring to some degree, either light sparring or heavy full sparring, right? And if you do heavy full sparring every day, you are going to end up with injuries, right? You're going to either injure yourself if you're not so good, or you're going to injure all your training partners, right? And then you're not going to have any training partners. So we do move up to that modality, and we do full contact type training later. But I think the key point is, for striking based martial arts, it must always be slightly abstracted away, because we can't just smash each other in the heads as much as we would potentially like to, right? And then what other bits and bobs do we do? So we also have a few other sort of collective bits, which include things like theory. So actually learning the Wing Chun principles and exploring them and doing some sort of mental training. Sometimes these are might include little drills so that you get the idea of things like structure or center line. So we might have some short drills for you to practice. And then we also include some other things that are more in line with Chinese other sort of Chinese meditative practices. So we might include some breath work, some breathing, and exercises that are called Qigong, to sort of breathe, center, relax, improve intention, focus, connection to the breathing, etc., which are all very, very useful. But they're not a sort of key core part of Wing Chun. They are in our forms. Which the forms encompass many of these parts, right? So the forms will teach you stance, structure, footwork in the second form and further on, etc., right? So, and you even get moments of little partner work where you're kind of using your own body as a line, which is quite clever. So when you don't have somebody around to get some of those feelings. So then we have a sort of an odds and ends of sort of theory, qigong, and other bits that we sort of throw in at the end. Now that's for beginners, but we'll start all of those things. So we'll begin with basic Chi Sao to start with, but each of those areas progress, right? So we begin with basic steps like the arrow step, but we move up to quite complicated steps, like, so for example, a triangular advancing step, which is like maybe 2 or 3 bits all linked together with hand movements. But the beginners begin with a simple sort of arrow shuffle step, yeah. And that goes with all of these things, the Chi Sao, the partner drills, etc. So everything begins slow, and then we add more and more material once we're happy with it, and we can improve, right? And generally the principle in Wing Chun is we start and you get the idea and you practice it until you can do it fast, until you can do it at real speed. Speed is power, and we want to be, relaxed and snappy and whippy and sharp in the movements before we begin to add more, basically. And we use that speed and movement quality as our indicator that we're ready to progress, yeah? And then there are a few extra bits that we add on later on. So later on we add more complete free fighting. So it's our version of sparring, which is, it's from Chi Sao initially. But we also add, completely, what we call connecting and disconnecting free fighting. So it's more like regular sparring. We also do it in closed quarters. So like on the top of a table or on a small disc on the floor, so that you're forced to stay close and use your footwork. We also do things like multiple attackers with weapons. And then we also train weapons. So we train the knives, the Wing Chun knives, and the pole, which is sort of advanced power training, but also introduces new movements and ultimately is also learning to fight with those weapons. And then finally, we also have but also integrally for sort of intermediate students, is the wooden dummy, who is like your permanent long-term training partner that you can practice all of these things on and get sort of feedback. And so it's like having a training partner that you can hit as much as you want, basically, right? But also learn lines, angles in an idealized sense. So brilliant training tool as well. So that's it. So in total that takes us to about sort of 14 different training modalities, right? But for the beginner, we focus on the stuff at the start: warm up, calisthenics, stance, basic moves, footwork, bag or pad work, partner work, and then we will introduce Chi Sao, theory, forms, Qigong, etc. later on, right? So your key things are warming up for structure and mobility, warming up for sort of mobility, injury prevention, calisthenics to build your general physical preparedness and a little bit of strength that is appropriate for the art, your stance training to build structure, your basic movements to teach you the actual skills, the basic movement skills, and to learn how to strike. Footwork, essential skill for moving in fighting. Bag or pad work, applied footwork with power, and applied footwork and striking with power. Partner work, learning how to do that from something that isn't resisting to something that is very resisting. Introducing Chi Sao, which is a special type of partner work, and then also some theory to make sure that we understand all the things that we're doing. So those are the components of this course on Welcome to Wing Chun. Good. I look forward to training with all of you. See you soon.